Hello and welcome. I am Lian Bon and this is Rappler Talk. We have today Irene Khan, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Opinion, who is concluding her 2-week mission to the Philippines, where she said the positive developments under the Marcos administration is not sufficient to turn the page decisively from the former Duterte government. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I just heard very strong recommendations from you to abolish NTF-ELCAC. You're not the first special rapporteur to say it. We know our government is very defensive and resistant when it comes to red tagging. Did you sense any openness from your meetings with them that they're at least willing to discuss it on the same page as the victims of red tagging discuss it?
Well, on red tagging, the government's answer to me has been, we don't have a policy on it. And by not having a policy on it, they mean we are not asking people, our officials, even if they're doing it, to do it. And my answer is, well, you don't have a policy on corruption. You have a policy on anti-corruption. So why don't you adopt a policy on anti-red tagging and make it very clear? I think a statement from the very top.
You mean President Marcos?
From President Marcos, or an executive order from him that sets out very clearly that this government does not approve of red tagging and will take action against officials who do it. I think that would settle down the whole issue of whether or not there is red tagging.
You met with Frenchie Mae Cumpio, a campus journalist who is being red tagged and is in jail over those accusations. She's not the first journalist to be red tagged also and to be sent to jail. How do you recommend us improving the administration of justice in these cases, where the suspects are actually the trophy cases of the security forces in their counterinsurgency campaign?
Well, that is very, very sad, because these trophy cases tend to be young women, and very articulate, talented young women who are wasting their time in prison. And I think there's a responsibility on the entire justice system to ensure that cases like this do not languish in prison, that they are handled speedily, with empathy, but also with due diligence. In her case, she was arrested at the age of 21. She is now 25, and I won't get into the details of the case, but there is a lot of information to suggest that she will have a strong defense. So the case should be reviewed immediately. No one should have to spend 4 years in prison, certainly not at the age of 21, and then either dismissed or brought to trial speedily.
There's a sense of hopelessness among victims of red tagging or those charged with accusations that root from red tagging. It's because they're going up against a state who already has prejudged them. They already see them as communists or even sometimes as terrorists. So how do you navigate a situation like that?
Well, that is why I'm telling the government that red tagging is not in its own interest. It is undermining people's faith in its own institutions, whether they are security institutions or whether they are justice institutions. The security institution is not behaving the way it should. It should not be entering into smear campaigns against people. And the justice system is failing to address those smear campaigns. So that weakens the state and weakens the trust that citizens must have in the state. So it's counterproductive in the sense that it's isolating people. It's pulling them away rather than bringing them in, and as their own citizens, as a democratic government, the people to whom they're accountable, and especially young people, because young people get disillusioned to destroy not only the present but also the future. The state must listen. But I think there is a veil of denialism at one level, but at another level, they're perfectly aware of what's happening, and it was there in Duterte's time. When these kinds of practices are introduced, they're very hard to root out. Because they continue somewhere underground, they're not happening out in the open. And that's why this government, which seems to be wanting an open, interactive, accountable government, should treat this issue very seriously.
You have met with petits fonds. I'm not sure if you have been made aware by the complicated relationship of petits fonds and the media sector. They said that media killings are not job-related. How do you balance that statement with a counter statement? I'm sure you've been made aware of unions and media groups that say this is, again, denialism on their part.
Well, in some countries, they have adopted, some countries that have set up, but there are also high levels of killing because of organized crime and so on, and they have set up specific protection mechanisms to address protection, prevention, and prosecution. There, the presumption is that it is work-related until it is proven that it is not. So you start with the assumption that if you're doing a job where you are dealing with dangerous information that will hurt powerful interests, then the assumption is if something happens to you, that it happened because of your work. And that's how they should begin and investigate all cases of killings of journalists. Maybe, I'm not saying that there aren't any other non-related cases, but the right approach to take is to investigate first and not make any assumptions.
You also recommended to strengthen AO35. That has been a buzzword from since Duterte. Did you identify any specific part that is integral to making it work? You said earlier it's not working hard enough. Did you?
Yeah. Well, the data that we have goes back to 2022. We don't have any data from the government since then. And at that time, there were about 386 cases or so that they were investigating. Well, first of all, that's only a small percentage of the actual killings that have taken place. And secondly, even that, where do they stand on it? Have they got rid of them? Are they looking into new cases? There seems to be an inclination to think, well, that's too far in the past. We should just close the book. But justice cannot just be wiped off like that, justice for the victims at that time. And more importantly, what went wrong? Why were people killed? Why did impunity persist for so long? It's in the interest of the government. It should be in the interest of the Department of Justice to actually investigate that so that they can do a better job. AO35 is a mechanism that brings together all kinds of different entities. All those entities need to work better because, yes, it's true, justice is not delivered only by one entity. But if they don't work together to deliver justice, then they're feeding impunity and therefore the problem keeps the cycle of impunity continues.
Was it raised during your meetings about the transparency of AO35 to Commission on Human Rights? They've been complaining that they don't get full access.
Yes, I didn't specifically address that issue because we have a special rapporteur who deals with summary executions. But what we did talk about is access to information. And my proposal is that there should be a law on access to information. At the moment, it's only an executive decision. And that law should clearly specify what should actually protect information, and exemptions should be an exception. At the moment, there are very many exemptions, and of course, there's one catch-all exemption. The idea is not to lock information away from citizens, but to provide that to citizens. Otherwise, problems don't get solved.
I'm down to my last questions. A source of frustration before was when the United Nations Human Rights Council issued a resolution to offer technical cooperation to the Philippines. Our human rights community said it was a watered-down resolution that was not enough to make any changes. Having seen what you saw when you report back to the Council, will you recommend an action stronger than a technical cooperation?
Well, what has actually happened is, yes, it is technical cooperation. It has been slow going, but I think they're making some important breakthroughs. One important breakthrough has been able to bring civil society to sit down at the table with the government. That took 18 months for the government to agree on a list that was palatable to them. Obviously, the United Nations would like to expand that list and make it a situation where civil society can walk in and the government is willing to talk to anyone who is reliable and a legitimate civil society organization. That's going to take some time. Beyond that, of course, the actual issues have to be handled. What I think the United Nations really very strongly believes is multi-stakeholderism. Creating confidence among all stakeholders, and there I think they have made some breakthroughs. It's the same as I said for the overall approach. There are some good signs there, but more has to be done, and here that relationship should continue for another period of time until there is actually full confidence in civil society that the government will seriously handle tasks, and the government also believes that civil society will make an important contribution to that process.
Right, my last question. We face a paradox. We are very low in the global rankings. We are very high in the impunity index. Yet we know we are a democratic country. I think you said it very well earlier. Freedom is a culture of tolerance. Yeah. So based on that standard, do you think the Philippines has freedom of expression?
Well, at the moment, no. I think there is freedom of expression at one level, because when you go out, you see all these people, everyone is talking. I mean, you saw the press conference room was full and everyone has been able to talk. But listening and tolerating on the part of the government is also part of the obligation to uphold freedom of expression.
All right, thank you so much. That was Irene Khan, UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Opinion. This is Lian Buan. Thank you for watching.